Hey guys, so today I'm going to show you how to make a lidded vessel that can turn into a teapot later. So I'm going to show you how to make a sunken lid, and in another video I'll show you how to make a dome lid like this. So the basics for the potential for you to make a teapot, everything starts out of a lidded vessel. So this is a small example of a teapot. So today I'm going to start with the vessel shape. All right, one of the differences when you're going to make a lidded vessel, depending on the kind of lid that you make, is the way you're going to finish the lip of the pot. So I'm making a sunken lid in this occasion. So for the top, as I'm pulling, I'm going to leave a little bit of thickness on the top rim. Think about it of like a match. On top of the match there is a little bit of extra thickness. So that's what I'm thinking when I'm pulling. I'm still pulling towards even thickness before I shape my form, my pot, but I'm leaving a little more thickness on the top. Okay, so now that I have even thickness on the bottom of the pot, I have a little bit of extra thickness on the top for the sunken lid. I'm going to start shaping. Right, so the very last thing that we're gonna do is the gallery. Now that the rim, although it's still thicker, is kind of more of a round end, I want the top to be flatter so that it's easier for me to split into the gallery. So what I'm gonna do is, as I support the top, I'm going to use my finger on the right hand to create sort of like a flat top. Now to create the gallery that is going to support the lid, I'm going to split this top rim in two. To do that, I'm going to hold with my left hand the wall under the I'm going to hold the wall where I'm going to be doing pressure. So with my left hand, I'm supporting the wall, and with my right hand, I'm going to create the gallery. So I'm going to start from the top, splitting that rim in two. So I'm going to hover my right finger on top of that lip and start doing a little bit of pressure towards the bottom of the pot. And if you notice, I'm dividing that lip in two. When I do this, it's important that you guys pay attention to your hand on the inside. This clay, this rim is gonna move down towards the bottom towards my bat. As I support the clay, I wanna make sure that there is a gap between my finger and the clay so that there is room for the clay to move downwards. I wanna make sure that I'm careful not to squeeze the clay between my finger, between my hand and as I push down, so that this rim doesn't get too sharp or breaks off. So there's a little bit of a gap in here, and I continue to push down. Okay, so this is where my lid is going to sit. I want this to be enough thickness for the lid to sit flush on this rim. So you don't want to make this gallery too shallow. I'm going to push it down a little bit more. And this is where I'm going to measure for my calipers. Those calipers are going to sit straight down on the flat edge of the rim and wherever that curve starts to happen. I'm going to move my pot on a board, but I want to have it close to me in case of the measurement from my caliper gets moved while I'm making the lid and checking the width. So I usually have my pot close so that if I need to check, I don't have to walk all across the room. Okay, with a little bit of clay, I'm going to make the knob that I'm going to use for the lid, and then I'm going to make the lid that is going to be right now in the shape of a shallow bowl. So the first thing I'm going to do is the knob. So I'll select only the top part of this clay. As it's center, I start to push down with my fingertips. Squeeze the part that I'm going to use as a grip. So I want to have the shape that I want on the knob. And then create the neck of my knob. I usually have it a little taller than I need it so that I can trim the excess when I attach on the lid. Ooh. All right. So I most likely will cut part of that, so that won't be a big deal if it got a little dented. Put it on the side. Now I'm going to create the lid. I'm going to check the final width that I need on the lid. So the bottom of my clay the base needs to be narrower than the final width that I need, so that I can create that sort of small curve in the shape of a shallow bowl. Okay, I'm very close to the final width that I need on my lid. If you guys notice the lid that the gallery that I did, it has a little bit of a flat spot. So instead of just a curve on the side of my lid, I'm going to create a little bit of a flat spot also on the rim of the lid. So to do that, I'm going to hold my hand in front of me, my left hand. So my fingers are going to be a little bit lower below the rim, and I'm going to push that rim towards my hand so that the clay has a spot to rest, and that is going to be right in front of me. That rim, I'm going to pull it towards my left hand and have it sit a little bit flat on my finger, on my hand. Then I'm gonna check the width. All right, a little bit, just a hair, I needed a little hair wider. So I'm going to compress from this inside curve towards my right hand to make the lid a little bit wider. Okay, so that's what I need. This is a lot of clay for me to keep, so I'm going to trim some of that. Going from the side with a knife, I'm going to create the thickness. I'm looking at where this ends, where the clay ends here, or where my the edge of my knife is creating the cutting edge. So I just want to make sure I have enough thickness for when I cut that lid off the back. And this time I'm using a thread instead of my wire tool. You guys can also use the wire tool, but I find a piece of thread, regular thread, helps create an even line when you're cutting off of a piece of clay like I am doing now. So I let go on one end. I'm just going to hold one end of my string. I turn the wheel slowly, and so that would cut the top of my clay. And so I'm going to transfer that onto my board. So this is going to be the lid that goes on my pot. I need to make sure that I'm building the lid and the pot at the same time, so that the clay and the pot, the lid and the pot shrinks at the same time. If you notice, the lid is much smaller, so it might dry faster. I want to keep an eye on the two, so that if my lid seems to be drying faster, I can cover that and keep my pot uncovered. So I'm going to place them on the same board. Whenever the two dry a little bit and I can touch them and the clay should not feel sticky but still wet, then I'm going to place them together so that they continue to dry together. By doing that, I'm going to make sure that I keep this measurement as accurate as I can, and so that I'll have a close or a tight fit when they sit together. I'll come back to you guys when that is ready. Another note that I want to make before I go and come back is that the measurement that I have on my caliper, I usually have that go onto a notebook in case for some reason by accident I drop my lid and I have to remake it. I need the wet measurement. So what I would do is take this into my notebook, write down this width, and then maybe write down, round teapot or round lidded vessel, whatever description you need. And so if my lid were to break, I have this original wet measurement. If I take another measurement later when my pot is leather hard, that pot has already shrunk. So that would not do any good for me if I have to replace the lid. So I really recommend that you guys keep track of that measurement just in case. All right, I'll get back to you guys when my lid is ready to sit on the vessel. Okay guys, so I want to show you how the vessels are at the moment. The top surface of the lips feel dry. They're soft, but they are not sticky anymore. If I touch the clay and I don't have any marks on my fingers, then I can turn my lid upside down and place it on the gallery so that now the gallery and the vessel shrink together. The bottom at the moment is pretty soft, so I can even have a mark of clay on my fingers. So the bottom is usually much softer because it doesn't receive as much air. So this I'm not ready to trim yet, but I need to keep the lid on top so that they shrink together. And at the moment I'm just gonna let them like this. I might put a piece of plastic on top so that the bottom keeps drying but not so much the top. My little knob, one of them is getting drier, so I'm going to keep getting some water on it and cover them. So these two I'm going to keep on the side and covered while the bottom of my pots are drying. And when they are ready to trim, I'll come back to you guys. Okay, here we are. We have I've been waiting for my lid to dry for trimming, and I kept my vessel I kept my lid just upside down on the vase until I was ready to trim the foot. So I have trimmed the foot of my pot. Now I'm ready to trim the lid that is going to go with this vase. I'm going to have this centered as we usually do. Alright, I went over with the metal rib to remove the marks of my trimming tool. But now we have our lid ready to connect the knob so that this can be a finished vessel. So there you go, that's our sunken lid. Okay, so I have two knobs because I made two pots. I'm going to attach the smaller knob on this piece. And as I mentioned to you guys before, I usually leave the neck of the knob a little bit taller so that I can gauge the height that I want to have a good grip to open that lid. So I'm going to cut a little bit of that height. Now I was just checking to see that that was leveled. Right. Then as usual, we're going to score and slip. And I attach this on the wheel. You don't have to attach this on the wheel. I just thought it would be easier for me to center the knob on the lid. Alright, I'm going to add a little bit of a coil around my knob, and that would be that for this lidded vessel, finished lidded vessel. Okay, so here we have one finished vessel. I just attached the knob. The coil that I added, if you have a strong connection, you don't have to add that little coil to connect the knob. So it's just up to you to determine whether you need that coil that was that I added in the bottom. Now I'm going to show you another way to trim the lid. So I have a gallery. This can either be a sunken lid or a dome lid, but to trim on this lid, I trimmed it straight on the back, as you guys saw. Another way for us to do that is straight on the pot, because we would already have a gallery that is holding the lid. If it has a good fit, you don't have to even center the lid. You do have to center the pot. Then after your pot is centered, you can trim straight on top, which is what I'm going to do. Okay, and in this case I'm going to keep my lid as a dome lid, and I would just add a knob that I still have to trim for that to be attached. So far we have two pots with a gallery. One is going to be a sunken lid, one is going to be a dome lid, with the same approach of the gallery. I'm going to turn this pot into a teapot, so I'll show you what to do next. Okay guys, so we're going to talk about the teapot. I have a spout. I have a small spout that I'm going to attach to this piece, and I have my handle. My handle, as we discussed in class, is still soft. Now, to attach the spout, this is a small hollow cylinder that I threw. So I went straight to the bat, and then I threw this kind of hollow piece. This I have just cut off the bat. And when I do make a teapot, I usually throw a couple of spouts so that I can decide which one I like better to the size of my teapot that I'm making and the proportion of the spouts. So I decided to attach this piece right here. So these are just small cylinders that I threw directly on the bat, hollow, so you can see on this piece that there is still sort of like the rough edge from the bat. So to prepare my spout, I'm going to remove a little bit of that thickness with a knife. Okay, so I have trimmed a little bit of that thickness on my spout. I think right here I went a little bit thin in a spot, but what I'm right now looking for is that the inside is even. You know, I don't want rough edges because that's gonna be the flow of the water through the spout. Then so I just kind of smooth the inside from the trimming. The next thing that I want to look at for when you guys attach the spout, this is a different teapot. This lid was just a small bowl that was trimmed to fit around the vessel. So if you wanted to make this kind of lid rather than a sunken lid, what you do is you measure the opening of your vase when it's wet. You know, that would be your measurement right on the edge of the outside rim, like this. And so when you throw this like a bowl, when you're making your lid, this measurement should fit the inside of your lid, so that when they're leather hard, that fits on the outside, right? So that is this vessel part, the lip of this vessel is holding the lid in place, as opposed to this kind of lid where the gallery is holding your lid in place. Right, going back to the spout. What I want you guys to keep in mind is the top of the tip of the spout should be aligned with the top of your teapot, or it could even be higher. You don't want to attach a spout where the opening is lower or horizontal, because if you imagine this being filled with water, this right here would be the level of your water. If this were lower or more in a horizontal angle, then you lose kind of the amount of water that your teapot can hold. So you want to definitely avoid something that where your spout is just horizontal. You do want to keep the rim, the tip of the spout flush with the rim or higher. So for this teapot, after I have trimmed a little bit of that thickness, I do want to have this a little bit of an angle. That would be pretty nice. You know, I have, if I didn't cut any on this spout, if I don't cut anything, this level right here would be still a little higher than the level of my pot here. But I think I want a little bit of an angle and a little bit of a different, you know, a little bit more of a flat and on the top of the spout. So I'm going to cut if you were to make a spout that is more of a cone shape like this, what you would do is you would make a line that it cuts only on one side, so that when you remove and attach, your spout is now in an angle. So that's what I'm going to do now. Now my spout sits a little bit higher, a little bit with an angle, I should say. So right now I'm looking at the, before I attach, I'm looking where I want to place my spout so that it is aligned. So I'm looking for the position. When I won't have it where I want my spout, I'm going to trace the outside outline. With the needle tool. Then when I score and connect, I want to think about the thickness of my spout. And I'm going, so that I don't have to realign this, I'm going to make a mark where these two meet. So now I need to consider the thickness of my spout before I think about the next step. So I'm going to do a second outline that represents the thickness of my spout. So this is where I'm going to score right here. I'm going to remove that so I don't drop the lid. Now my next step is either opening the chamber here with one big hole, or I can make a couple of holes, sort of like thinking about colander kind. I think it will depend on what kind of spout you have. The spout that I have here has a small opening, which, by the way, when you guys make a spout, you don't want the final opening to be smaller than the handle of your needle tool. You don't want to make it any smaller because the clay is going to shrink. Then when we glaze is going to build a little bit of a thickness around the opening, and that is going to close the opening of the spout farther. So you don't make it smaller because it might get clogged as we glaze later. So that's what I would suggest you go with. But you know, I have kind of a wide opening and a small end of my spout, so I could really go either way. There is no really the right or wrong. If you're thinking loose leaves for your teapot, maybe you want to go with this approach. In this case, for this teapot, I didn't have such a big opening here in the bottom, so I went with one hole for that teapot. So in this case, I'm going to show you what you would do if you go for this approach. So I have a hole cutter, and we have some in the studio. You guys will be able to use a hole cutter. If you don't have a hole cutter, what I would recommend you do is use your needle tool, and you will slowly push that towards, as I rotate my needle, I slowly push in so that it goes at least the thickness of my handle goes through. Right? Now I have a lot of cleanup, so I would do 4 times. And I'm not sure if you guys can see that inside, but I have a lot like this to clean up on the inside. So I definitely need to clean all of that clay. I'll work on that, and then we'll be ready to attach our spout. So just as I flatten this outside, I will have to go back and make those holes again. I'm going to do the same thing on the inside. The end of your wooden knife works really well to clean that inside, to get rid of all of that clay. Okay, so as I clean those holes, they got clogged again, so I can come back with my needle tool. I can use my handle to kind of open those up again. I really don't want to leave any burrs, any left kind of texture, because that will later trap glaze, and that might clog my holes as the glaze flows through on that stage. So I want to make sure that these holes are as clean as we can. Okay, so I have my openings cleaned. They're clean on the inside. Now I'm going to score. I'm going to score the edge of my spout, and I'm going to score that ring that I left for attaching the spout. Okay, make sure you are going to compress to have that seam be strong. So I'm looking at the angle, and I'm also looking at these gaps. Before I compress too much, I could adapt the angle of my spout, you know, if I have to move it in any direction. Now if I have a little bit of a gap anywhere around, we're going to come back in a coil to reinforce. Since we're not able to reinforce the inside, we're going to make sure that we do have a little coil around the outside of the spout. And so when I scored, I went ahead and scored farther than the width on the base, on the vessel, so that I don't have to score that gap again. Ooh. And I'm going to blend the coil. Okay, so the last thing that I have to do is now attach the handle. Now, depending on the form that you guys are making, your handle can be on the side. For this shape of teapot, I want my handle to be on the top, and I'm also going to have part of the spout to support my handle. So what I've done is I trimmed the excess. So I had a bigger chunk on the side as my handle was drying. I have trimmed part of that. I have trimmed a little bit of a curve here, so when my spout rests on this, my handle rests on the spout, it has that curve, and then here on the side is just an angle for the connection, a little bit of an angle. So I want to make sure that I'm looking straight on my teapot so that I can align that straight. Okay, I have marked where they connect. Now I just have to score and slip. I'm going to be gentle as I compress my handle onto the spout because this is still soft, it's not too hard, so I'm just being gentle to connect these two. I might add a little bit of a coil here And in this gap, I think I might leave this little curve here from the my handle, and I might add a little bit of a coil around this, so I might leave that a little bit. So my handle was a little uneven on this side, so I'm just adding that coil on this side, and now I'm just cleaning up. Okay, so there you have it, teapot. Now, just a reminder, you cover everything pretty good. These connections have wetter clay, so you have to dry this slowly, at least cover them completely for overnight, and then the following days I would uncover this for a couple hours, cover again until it's completely dry. So that's it.